The following contains spoilers for Persona 3. Viewer discretion is advised. Minato, our dancing emo boy, often comes off as cold as his blue hair. Depending on your dialogue choices, he can be perceived as standoffish, and doesn't seek help from others, mostly only talking when spoken to. Where you and Joker have a tendency to depend on their friend group, Minato depends on his individual interactions, specifically those that he does not himself approach. In this video, I'm going to theorize as to why this is the case. Before we get started, I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters. Your support makes it possible for me to continue to make these videos, and I very much appreciate it. If you want to donate, the link is below, but as always, this is completely optional. Also, if you want to make sure you're notified about new videos, it's just following me on Twitter or liking my Facebook page. YouTube has made the sub box even worse. I think what is the most interesting plot point in Persona 3 is the idea that Minato has had death inside him from the beginning, and that he made a contract with death in the form of Pharaohs. I believe, since Pharaoh has been a part of him for so long, that Minato is acutely aware of his mortality, an experience that many adolescents and young adults encounter. Now, awareness of one's mortality can lead to existential crisis, but it does not in the case of Minato. The concept of an existential crisis is different than existentialism as a whole. Existentialism, according to Google, as I'm too lazy to define it myself, is a philosophical theory or approach that emphasizes the existence of the individual person as a free and responsible agent, determining their own development through acts of the will. What we see as an existential crisis is what is viewed as a starting point to an existentialist. In the face of an apparently meaningless or absurd world, one can experience disorientation, confusion, or dread. Knowing this, the lyrics of Burn My Dread makes even more sense. Consider the first chorus. I will burn my dread. I once ran away from the god of fear, and he chained me to despair. Burn my dread. I will break the chain and run till I see sunlight again. I'll lift my face and run to the sunlight. I think that these lyrics exemplify Minato's acceptance not only of his mortality, but the freedom that existentialism grants. See, existentialism is the idea that there is no greater power guiding us, that we create our own meanings, and at first, although that can be frightening and anxiety-inducing, the idea is that we push past that, we become freed. So we follow Minato and watch as he not only embraces his mortality, but literally fights a god and chooses to become a seal to protect the world from death. He becomes Messiah, but not one fashioned to be another god, but rather just a man choosing to give humanity the freedom promised of existentialism. Or, in simpler terms, existentialism isn't life is meaningless sad face, but life is meaningless happy face. In this way, I do not see Minato as depressed. One could perceive his journey through the game as his act of burning his dread, although from the beginning he is aware of his mortality. You can see his making bonds as a sign that he embraces his mortality, but does not let it hinder him from living. In fact, at the end of the game, months pass between the encounter with Nyx and his becoming a seal. But he doesn't stop interacting with his friends. He knows that there is no point to continuing these bonds, just as he knew at the beginning of the game, except he has accepted the fact that there is no point outside the meaning he creates for himself. He chooses to maintain those friendships because they're important to him, and since he is the god of his own universe, he's able to create meaning for these bonds. That is to say, the happiness and fulfillment he derives from these bonds have meaning despite the same inevitable outcome because he is the god of his own universe. Essentially, the message I gather from Persona 3 is that, yeah, we're all going to die, but since the outcome is the same regardless, we may as well enjoy the ride and fulfill our goals for ourselves. After all, one of the messages shown in the original introduction to Persona 3 was Memento Mori, or Remember Death, commonly translated to Remember You Will or Must Die. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more, click subscribe. You'll sometimes get notifications. And comment below about your own existential crisis. That sounds fun!